Welcome to the fight of the century in the version control systems. In the left corner, Ivercy by Philipp Stiefel, former Access MVP and also author of Find, Replace and Other Access Tools. In the right corner, the free msaccess-vcs-addin available on GitHub, written by Adam Waller. Adam is IT systems analyst and programmer for an organization and has 25 years of experience with Access. Let's get ready to rumble.
Thank you, Peter, for this nice introduction, and welcome everybody in the audience. Before we really get started, I just want to make clear, this is not your typical presentation about version control. I will start with a really quick refresher or a teaser with some theoretic information and stuff, but this is not meant to be a full-blown presentation about version control. If you do not understand some details, don't worry. I think it will mostly become clear during the presentation. At least I hope so. With that being said, let's get started now. So, why would we use version control at all? We get a fine-grained annotated history that contains defined state marked by labels and tags. And these includes atomic change sets. And you will get searchable comments or commit messages in that history, provided you enter them, of course. You can easily compare different versions of objects, of the very same object, to exactly see what changed from version to version. You can also link change sets to items in bug trackers or issue databases to provide even more context and information for one specific change. And all this is based on a source code control repository. And this will be the single source of truth for your project, for your code that defines your application. If it is in the repository, then it is true, it exists, but if it's somewhere else, it does not yet. This repository also allows you to define rules and automated processes based on your source code. It also allows you to create different branches of the source code to separate major versions or to develop features in isolation. And please note, only the last item on this list, which is ordered by my personal preference of importance, is collaboration. Of course, this is an important aspect, but it's not the key main reason to use source code control. Of course, without source code control, you will be really struggling to collaborate with other developers, but it's not the first reason to go there. Let's look at this from a slightly different angle. What are the tangible benefits you get from all the items I just listed? You can easily go back to previous versions of your code, and you can group changes into meaningful sets. That the changes are not just there in isolation, but you can combine different objects that all were changed for one common purpose. And this allows you to quickly identify the context and the scope of bugs once you identified them. And of course, this helps with fixing bugs quickly. It also allows you to manage parallel lines of development. You can easily have one version of your application already in production at the customer. He works with it, and you will only apply bug fixes to the code, but will not change any major features or so. Major development will be in a different branch, but then you can also easily merge changes between the branches to write your bug fixes only once in the production branch and then move it over to the development branch. You can easily enforce programming style rules, particularly on yourself, because I'm a lazy person and I like to be reminded when I cut some corners. That's something that can be done. And of course, you can also enforce them on other members of your team. And all that allows you to easily collaborate with other developers. But why can you not just use version control like Git or Team Foundation Server on its own and Access as your development tool? Why do you need an additional add-in for Microsoft Access? Well, the core problem of Microsoft Access in context of version control is that you will get one big access file that stores all your form definitions, report definitions, all the VBA source code. Everything is lumped together in one binary file. And that is quite bad for version control because you will rather need individual text files describing your objects to be really able to leverage the benefits of version control. Also, these add-ins provide an integration into the Access user interface that you have the power of version controls right at your fingertips. And it can also act as an intermediary between you, the developer, and your Access development environment and any version control backend. Now, let's look at the problem of the history with conventional backups. Let's assume you make daily backups, or whenever you make major changes to your application, you make a backup that is just a copy of the Access file, maybe contained in a zip archive or whatever, but in essence, it is an Access file. Then you get over time these different backups. They might be identified by timestamps or version numbers. Doesn't really matter. You will have a problem. If you look at these files, then you will, and what you see in the magnifying glass is an actual screenshot of an Access file opened in a text editor. It will look like this for tools that are not Access. This is not very helpful. If all your versions look like this, how can you tell if there is any difference between them, or what is the difference? So this becomes very time consuming, even if you open your backup in Access. Finding out what changed from the previous backup is a real pain. Compare that with a version control history. You start with one defined state. Either you added the project to the version control repository or you applied a tag to a certain state, and then you start working. You changed a module, you apply a new tag to label a new state, you add a new module, you change another module, and you apply yet another tag. And if you now look at these versions, they are much more understandable. And if you compare different versions, you see much more easily what changed here. You can tell in an instant not only that they are different, but which objects changed. And this is not enough. If you look closer at this, then you can even compare individual versions of objects with different versions of the very same object. And if you do that in a diff tool, it will look like this. You will get, and don't worry that the font is too small to read, you will get the point anyway. You will get a comparison between these two files, and you will get highlighted information what exactly changed down to individual characters. It's not any guessing anymore. You will see each changed characters at a glance quickly. Now, there are two different major flavors of version control. If you heard about version control like 10 years back, it was probably mostly about centralized version control. This is very easy to understand. It's a little bit like connecting your Access database to a SQL Server backend. All the front ends will talk to a single server, and that is the same with centralized version control, only that you as a developer and your development environment will talk to a single source code repository. And all developers on the team will talk to the very same server. Now, with distributed version control, the picture is different. Every developer has a local repository on his own computer. And this repository is what he is doing his daily work to. And he can collaborate with individual other developers by synchronizing his repository with that of the other developer. But usually you will also define a central repository. But this is not really different from the lots of individual repositories by its content or functionality or something, but only because you designated it as the central repository. And if you have external teams, you could also add an intermediary repository that allows external developers a kind of gateway to your central repository. And if you want to work with the central repository in the way that you synchronize, there is one term you need to know, it's pull, and that will fetch changes from the central repository into your local repository. And the other way around is push, in which you will submit your changes from your local repository to the central repository where every other developer can also fetch these changes. So the advantages of distributed version control are that almost all operations are possible online. On your local computer, you can perform almost all version control operations. You also got complete control over your repository and can do with it whatever you like with your local one, not necessarily with the remote central repository. And it allows for collaboration between individual developers without using the central server. You can collaborate with another developer without affecting everybody else. But it also comes with a disadvantage, and that is, I think it's quite severe, but still it's worth it. It will increase complexity by quite a bit, and it has a steep learning curve if you want to be able to master uncommon operations, which sometimes are required. With that being said, I hand over to my partner in crime or opponent in battle, Adam.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. I think it's, as we talked about this presentation, we felt it'd be really helpful to get a basic overview of version control and how that works in Access before we jump into the fun part here. But without further ado, I want to introduce the battle here. So we'll give Philip a minute to strap on his gloves here. But we are what we're going to do is we're going to have 4 different rounds where we're going to demonstrate how to utilize our respective add-ins in some day-to-day operations that you would commonly do as a developer. And we will just take turns. I'll introduce a round, I'll demonstrate it in VCS add-in, and then I'll turn it over to Philip. He'll do the same thing in Ivercy, and then he'll introduce the second round, and then we'll just go back and forth through those 4 rounds. But there's a part that you get to be a part of here, and that is to determine who actually wins the round, we're asking for your help. So at the conclusion of each round, we're going to give you the chance to, you'll see a poll that'll come up, and you can click which add-in you feel like did the better job, which one was your personal preference for that particular round. And at the very end, then Peter will give us the totals, and we'll find out who actually wins this round. So let me jump in to round 1. I want to talk about Bob Gets Started. So we're going to just role play a couple people here. So I'm going to be Bob here, and hey, I've got this Access database and I just want to get started. Here it is. I've got my, Northwind database classic template there. How do I get this into version control? How do we really start off with this? So what I'm going to do is we're going to use GitHub as our example today. So I'm going to go to my GitHub profile and I'm going to click to create a new repository. So I'm going to give it a name up here. We're going to call this VCS example. And then I'm going to make it a private repository. If you're working with a client's database, he probably does not want that publicly on GitHub. So make sure you select private if you're dealing with anything sensitive. So we'll create repository. Click of a button. There we go. We've got a repository, empty one right now, but it's created there on GitHub. I'm going to copy this this URL here so that I can put that into GitHub Desktop. GitHub Desktop is a program that I love to use for just working with repositories on GitHub, GitLab, and so forth. I'm going to clone that repository, grab it from a URL, and I'll paste in that URL that I just did. And I'm just going to add Bob just to make it clear who I'm talking about there. So I'll click clone, and that has cloned that empty repository down to my computer. So if I come over to that folder here, and let me just zoom in so you can see that, you'll see there's a folder, VCS example Bob. And so that's kind of where I'm going to be starting from here. So let me jump back over to my database. I'm going to close my database, and then I'm going to just drop a copy of that database right into that folder. So this is my repository. So how do we actually break this down into source files? Here's where the add-in comes into play. I'm going to open up that database and we'll log in. And now how do we get this into source files? With my add-in, it's you have a tab up at the top for version control, and then you've got some different tools across the top there. The one that I use most often here is just export source files. So to take this complex database, lots of forms, reports, tables, and things, and to convert that entirely into source files has the extensive setup configuration option of one click. I'm going to click that button, and then the add-in loads, and then it exports my entire database down into source files. You can see every form, query, table, report, everything in there. Adds a couple default get, ignore, get attributes files for me. Very good, just over 7 seconds, and I've got that dropped into source files. You can see a new folder here, and now this has all of my source files for my database, and so that's perfect. That's just what I wanted. Now I could come back over here and just commit that right up to GitHub, but before I do that, I'm going to take one more step. And you wouldn't normally do this in a project, but for the sake of this example, to keep it simple, we're going to do that, and that is I'm going to go ahead and include the table data in this. So I'm going to just export all of the tables as XML for the table data. What that's going to do is it's going to allow me to later be able to build the database, including all the data. Now, again, as in a normal real-world scenario, you're probably dealing with a front-end, back-end where you're not necessarily including your actual data in Git. So I'll click Export Source Files, and then it's going to go ahead and include that table data. And then you'll notice over here we see a new folder has been added with the table information there. Perfect. So I'll go back to GitHub Desktop, and everything is there ready to go. So I'm just going to call this initial upload. Commit that to the main, and that commits it locally. And then I'll just click the button right up here to push that to origin. So now I can jump back over here to GitHub. I can refresh the page, and there I can see there's my source files all up on GitHub. So that I've started the project. I've got everything committed now to GitHub. So that is round one, using the VCS add-in to bring everything up to GitHub. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Philipp, and he's going to demonstrate that in Ivercy. Over to you, Philipp.
Thank you very much, Adam. That was amazing, I think. But let's see how Ivercy is doing here. I also created a repository on GitHub as a prerequisite, but beyond that, I did do nothing except I installed Ivercy previously and opened our Access database, the Northwind project. And now in Access, you will see there is a new tab in the ribbon there, and it contains lots and lots of icons for version control right in Access. And most of these are currently disabled because I have not put this database under version control yet. What I need to do that is use this button, add a database to default source code control provider, and it will bring up a dialog. That is a kind of a wizard style dialog. It has two major important options. You can say you want to clone a remote repository for the initial setup, or you can also create a new local repository. And of course, you can also use an existing local repository. As we have our repository on GitHub, I will say I clone a remote repository, and I will just copy over its URL here. And for authentication purposes, I will use a personal access token, which I post in here. And then I need to add a repository path for the local clone of the repository. And I've prepared a couple of paths here. So, and the next thing is I need to add an email address that is my identity, but is only used to mark my commits to GitHub. That is not related to authentication or authorization. That is all done by that personal access token. If I now click next on this dialog, the remote repository was already cloned to my computer. And now I can select a branch on the repository. And in this area here, I could select folders, but now only the slash for the root of the repository is there because the repository is empty. And now I will just say finish, and Ivercy brings up this dialog to select the objects. And these are all the objects from the database file. And of course, they are all pre-selected here, because usually when you want to add a database, you add all of it to the repository. I also enter a commit message. I just name it init for the initialization, and I hit OK. Ivercy tells me it needs to close the database, because it needs to do some processing with the database file, which only works well when it's not used by someone else at that moment. And now it's working to process all the files and put them into the Git repository. That takes a couple of, hopefully just seconds, because there's also quite a bit of pre and post processing involved to get better results. But in essence, Ivercy just uses the well-known load from text and save as text methods, which are built into Microsoft Access to produce the text files that will be added to the repository. And here we are. This is the database now under version control, and you might notice one difference here. There are tiny green check marks next to all the form or all objects in your database, and they indicate these objects are in source code control in a repository, and they are in a checked out shared state. That means they are checked out, you can edit them, but in theory, everybody else could also edit them. That is, with working with Git, that is not a real scenario, because as we said, the repository is on your local computer, so it's rather unlikely that another developer will interfere with your local repository. But as Ivercy is also able to work with centralized repositories, there it is a real possibility that other developers will have some objects checked out, and your development policy might not allow that. You also check them out and modify them. So there's one final step missing. I only committed the data, the definition and source files to the local Git repository, not yet to GitHub. And theoretically, I could say, okay, I'm done here because it's not Ivercy's primary responsibility to deal with stuff outside the local repository. You would need to run your Git client to do the final push to the remote repository. But there is a solution integrated that are custom commands in Ivercy. You can just define a command line that you can run in the command window and define that as a custom command. And I've got these two here. And now the git push one is interesting. I invoke this command git push, and you see it brings up this command line window. And now it's working, and it submitted my changes to the Git repository. And if I quickly look at this Git repository, this was the original state that I created an hour ago or so. And now I refresh this page, and you will see it is different. It contains now a Northwind folder, which contains all our sources. You just must believe me because I'm not going to show it, but you see Bob at Ivercy did commit a change set with the comment in it. So this is how you would set up your work environment for source code control with Ivercy. Peter, please run the poll to see who you think did better here. Okay, people, you can continue to vote on this. If you already voted and you change your mind, you can find the poll in the chat. You can always change your vote, but it will change your one single vote. You don't get additional votes if you vote again. So while you think about voting, we will go to the next round of our battle. And now Bob will actually do some work here. Don't run the slideshow because it will mess up things for me. Now I want to do some regular development work. And to do that in a way that is very easy for me to do here in this live situation and also visible for you, I will use the database here. It's called Southwind Traders. And I will change it back to Northwind Traders because that was a brand experiment. Maybe we don't want to use that, and I'm not sure if we want to use this color scheme. Maybe something more light in the background, like this light blue. And that is essentially enough for you seeing that I made changes here. I will close the object. I saved it before, and now you will see here in the list of the objects, there is a tiny red asterisk next to the home screen. That's the form I just edited. And this indicates the form has changed in Access. It's different from the same form in the source code control repository. And what I now need to do is to check in this, and the term check in is a synonym to commit. So I say changed header color as a commit message or as a comment, and I just need to click OK to submit my change to the local repository here. And if I'm confident that this change is also sensible to push to all other developers on my team, then I would once again run the command git push to push this change over to the GitHub remote repository here. This worked as well. We can look at this, but it's not very meaningful unless you are a Git expert. And let's very quickly take a look here at the GitHub side, and you see Bob at Ivercy changed header color. So, over to you, Adam. Let's see what VCS-addin can do.
All right, thank you, Philip. That was fantastic. An incredible amount of powerful options available there. Yes, let's take a look at that. So Bob is going to get started on his project. So he's going to open up his database. He's going to log in, and he just got an email from the marketing department, and they decided that they want to actually go with Eastwind Traders, so that they don't have a trademark conflict there. So they're going to change that to Eastwind Traders, and then we'll save that change there. And then now the complex process now of how do you commit that change to version control is exactly one click. So we'll click that button there, and you notice it in just over 2 seconds it pushed all of that up to the local repository. So I can jump over to GitHub desktop now, and I can see there's exactly one change here, the Northwind Traders to Eastwind Traders, and we can see a little change on the size of the form just because of my access window being different size. Great. Okay, so let's just call this name change Eastwind. There we go. We'll push that change. Then now if we jump back to our VCS example, then we can see, hey, here's our name change right there. I can click on that, and I can just see that right on github.com. There's the change that's been committed. So for the VCS add-ins, as simple as that. Again, just to recap, most of the time you're just making some changes anywhere in the database, and click that button to export source files, scans for any new changes, and boom, it's done. You don't have to select which ones or anything. It just grabs anything that has changed. So that's the end of round 2 for getting started with the committing some changes there. So we'll give you a chance to run the poll for round 2 and let us know your thoughts on actually committing some changes. And while you're voting on that, we're going to jump ahead to round 3. Now, round 3, we're going to just change things up just a little bit. I'm going to become Anne. This is our new Access developer on the team, and she wants to get started, but she's going to actually, instead of starting with the database like what Bob did, she's going to actually start from scratch from the GitHub repository itself. So when we come up to this repository right here on GitHub, I'm going to basically just click this button here, grab that URL, just like I did before, jump into GitHub desktop, and I'm going to go to File, Clone Repository. So then I'm going to clone this guy, and we're going to set that one. We're going to just add a little name designator here to make this Anne. So we're going to clone that repository so that Anne has a copy of it. And so now if I look in my file, I can see that Anne's got a copy now. However, it's going to be a little confusing because I got 2 of them right here. So this is Anne's copy. I'm going to just create an alias to make it clear that this is Anne's version. And then we'll do the same thing on Bob's to make it clear that this is Bob's version. Okay, so we're back in Anne's version right here. And if I take a look inside of Anne's repository, I can see there's the source files. But wait a minute, where's my database? Well, it's not there right now, but we want to actually build that binary database, access database file right from the source files. So to do that, I'm just going to, I'll just go ahead and close Access just to make it clear what we're doing. We're going to open up Access. I'm going to go to my version control tab right at the top, and then I've got a button I'm going to click here to build from source. So I'm going to build from source, and that's going to pop up a file dialog here. So I'm going to go to Anne's folder, and I'll grab that source folder that has the source files in it, and I'll click select that, and then it will pop up my little screen here that's going to then import all those objects into a blank database. Just creates a blank database, imports all those objects in to have everything that I need to be able to run that database. So now if we zoom back out, I could just run the auto exec and I can see I'm actually in a running database now for Eastwind traders. So that was a great start here. Well, we just got another email from the marketing department, and they decided they want to do another name change. So this time, they just want to call it the Calm Wind Traders because things are getting a little bit too crazy out there. So we'll just close that and save it. And Anne's going to commit her changes there. And since it's the first time she built the database from source, it's going to export everything there in the database under 7 seconds. Everything's out there, but you notice there's only one change here in GitHub Desktop. We've gone from Eastwind Traders to Calm Wind Traders. So let's say change name to Calm Wind Traders, and we'll push origin and jump back here now. If I refresh that page, we can see now that we've got a new change here that's changed it to Calm Wind Traders. So that's basically the process there of jumping in with Anne as a new developer, making some changes and pushing those up to that same shared repository. All right, Philip, let's go back to you and let's show us how to do that in Ivercy.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, I'm Anne now, and I've got here my designated folder in the repository in my local disk, and it basically does not contain anything. It's a local workspace that is empty, and it contains a folder for repository that is also empty. So Anne essentially starts with nothing except that she has Access installed with Ivercy, and she will select the Create from default SCC provider button and click that. This will bring up it's essentially the very same dialog, but a couple of it will behave a little bit different. Different controls are enabled because now we need to first get the source file before we can create our access file. It's once again as before, I need to clone the repository. I check that. I put in the URL of my repository. I will also paste in the personal access token, and I will select a local repository. That's just the path to the folder. That's where the repository will be created. And of course, my email address is ann@ivercy. And now I can already click next in this dialog. That already again cloned the GitHub repository to my local computer. And you see there are 2 branches in here. The origin branch is, or there may be even multiple origin branches. They are tracking branches referring to the remote. They are not of any interest to you. You will usually select the master branch, which is the denoted main branch of the repository, or a different branch that you might have used for that. Now you see, this is once again the folder structure of the repository, and now after Bob created the Northwind project, there is of course a Northwind folder. I now need to add a folder here for the local repository. And hang on a second, I rather copy that over because that's quicker than navigating in that folder selection. And for whatever reason, I keep making mistakes. So you will see this marvelous folder structure where I just failed to find the right folder. I should rather copy it over from the right location. And once I click finish here, Ivercy will pull all the source files from the local repository that has already been cloned and import them into your Access database. Once again, there's a bit of post and pre-processing going on, so it takes a moment or two while the database is created. But as you remember, I just started with the Access application with no database at all. And in very few seconds, I will have a database that I can really start working with. Bear with my slow computer. Okay, it finished. You once again see these green check marks here next to the objects. And I will look at the most recent changes. I know there was a bit of a discussion about if we are the north wind or south wind or calm wind traders, and I had enough of this. We are just the wind traders. Full stop, I hope. And maybe we should also change the colors here a little bit to make it more interesting, like have a green back color. Maybe we make it really green. Yeah, I like that. I like that. That is a good color design. I saved and now close the form. And once again, I need to commit my changes to the local repository. And I said, we are wind traders. So this is my statement here, my commit message. I click OK, and in an instant, this is checked into the local repository. Once again, I need to commit to push my changes to the remote Git repository to have that available to all other developers. I select once again the custom command git push. Here is the command output. I'm not going to zoom in on that, but I will quickly refresh this browser window here to show you now the most recent change was by Anne, and that's my commit message. We are the wind traders. So the changes in the repository, and I think this is my work here is done for now. Peter, can you run the poll?
Sure. For your information, you have 7 minutes left.
Okay, that should do fine. Thank you. I'm Bob, and I need to open my version of this database to continue work. So I just for you to see, here in the path is Bob. That's Bob's version. And now I heard from Anne, she just rang me. She told me, yeah, she fixed the discussion about what kind of wind traders we are. And I'm really curious what she did to achieve that. And that is a bit of important information. You need some communication channel outside to be informed when there are relevant changes to the remote repository that tells you, yeah, you need to pull these changes and incorporate into your work if you want to, of course. That is the usual procedure. You can set up an automated process on GitHub that sends everybody an email once there were changes pushed to the repository, or you think about another means of communication. But there is also something that Ivercy can do for you. If I click on this refresh status button up here, then Ivercy will already ask the remote repository, are there any changes there? And you see there is a blue, it's not really that visible to see, but it's there, and I hope you can see it. There's a blue exclamation point, and that indicates there are changes in the remote repository on GitHub. They're not yet in my local repository. To get them to the local repository, we need the other custom command here, git pull. That is once again just a command line call to the Git client. I run git pull. Now the output is worth a closer view. It looks a little bit different, and the important thing here is one file is changed, and you see the file is the file home.acf. ACF is just Ivercy's file extension for access forms. So you already know what to expect here. But if I again click on the refresh status button, you will see that this also changed here. The blue exclamation mark changed to a red exclamation mark. And the red exclamation mark tells me in my repository that's directly connected to my Access development environment, there is a new version of this object. And to finally get this into my work environment, I can use these nice context menu items, and the one I need here is get latest version. So I click that. It will once again bring up the dialog, because I could also fetch or not fetch multiple modified objects from the repository at once. The form home is pre-selected here, and I just click OK, and that will fetch the form into the database file. You see the red exclamation point is gone, because now my version in Access is identical to the version in the repository. And you see I'm warp, and the I get ends changes, ingenious fix to the wind discussion. And you see it's just the wind traders that we are, and that is fairly interesting. Yeah, and I think I demonstrated all that I wanted to show you in this round. So over to Adam.
All right, thank you very much. And again, just to recap on round 4 here, where Bob is going to fetch Anne's changes to take a look at that. So jumping over here to my Git repository, I'm going to switch over to Bob. So now I'm looking at Bob's, and if I fetch origin here, I'll notice there's one change that's out there on the remote. So I'll click the button to pull that down. And if I want to see what changed, I can come over here and see, oh, okay, there was one file that changed, and oh no, they went to calm wind traders. Okay, all right, whatever. So then we'll jump back to my file. So we'll jump into Bob's folder here, open the Northwind database, and you notice it still says Eastwind traders. That's because that change is in the source files, but it's not in my database. How do we pull that into the database? There are a couple ways that we can do that. One is we could do a build from source. That would build the entire project from source, bring in all the source files, give it a fresh build. But in this case, I'm going to do a merge build. This is a new feature we just released this past year that's going to just bring in the changed files. So I'll click that one, merge build, and then it will pop up. It will scan the source files, and then now it's showing me, hey, this looks like there's a change, and I don't want to overwrite your object, which has a newer date on it. So I'm going to click to show diff, and I can see, okay, here's the change here is the calm wind, east wind. Okay, that's fine, no problem. I'm good with that. So I'm going to go ahead and just overwrite all and continue. So you can see it just did one thing. It merged one form under 2 seconds. And then now if I open that database back up, now I can see that change is now incorporated into my project of calm wind traders. So there I am. I'm ready to go, ready to continue development work in our collaborative environment, and hopefully the marketing department is finalizing their name changes. So that with that, that concludes the our battle here. So we'll give you a chance to vote on that final round of bringing in the changes, and let us know what you think. And we thank you, Philipp, for your tremendous work. It's a great friendly competition on this. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That was great fun doing this battle. And now over to Peter, who will now tell you which of the add-ins is the overall winner of this battle.
Yes, it looks very much like a clear result. We have 56% for the VCS add-in, 44% for Ivercy.
Great, that is a well-deserved victory. Congratulations, Adam, on that great success. And thank you all who voted for either of us. So I think we don't have enough time to do many questions, but Peter, is there one or two questions that you think is very important for us to answer now? We will also be, at least I will also be in the evening session, so questions for Ivercy can more easily be deferred because I will be there to answer them.
I would say let's take them in the evening session then. Now, there are some questions, but the time now is already over.
Sure. Sounds good. Okay. I should be there as well, so sounds good.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Then we will all answer all questions in the evening session where there is not that a hard time limit. Thank you to all being involved here.
Thank you too. It was a great battle with a winner by points.
Oh, thank you.